So we're going to take a quick look at the build process. The process of building our project is the act of compiling our project down into a standalone executable file that runs on whatever our target system is. So in this case, we'll focus on Mac and PC builds. This will allow us to run our projects outside of the Unity environment. So at this point, we've been testing our projects through this preview, and this kind of does a reasonable job of testing the environment based on giving us an approximation of how our project's going to run, but we're running with all of this overhead of Unity and a number of other things. What we want to do is take this project and compile it down to a self-contained executable project. And so the way that we'll do this is very straightforward. We're going to choose File, Build Settings. And from the Build Settings menu, this is where we can choose the different target platforms. So whether we're building for Mac, PC, or Linux, we can build for iOS and WebGL, along with a number of other devices, including Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and so on. So we're going to stick with a Mac and PC build. And for all the projects in our class, we want to build both Mac and PC builds. Now, I'm going to build my Mac build first and kind of give you a sense of the difference between Mac and PC build. By default, we're going to build whichever scene is open unless we have something specifically set in our scenes build. We'll take a deeper dive into the build settings in future projects, but for now what we want to do is just make sure that Mac, PC, and Linux standalone is selected, and our target platform is whatever operating system we're currently building on. So if you're following along in this class on a PC, build your PC version first, because then you can test it. If you're following along on a Mac and you're authoring your projects in a Mac, then build in a Mac. Because I'm in a Mac, I'm going to start by building with the Mac. Now, it's not completely necessary, but you can see from this drop-down list of target platforms, I can choose Mac OS or Windows. If you're missing one of these options, that means that you did not activate the build support for the alternate platform. So likely what's happening is that if you're in a Mac platform and you click on this drop-down, you'll only see Mac OS unless you chose to include Windows. I posted a note about this in Blackboard, and vice versa. If you're in Windows and you don't see Mac build, you'll need to go back and reinstall Unity, making sure that you select the alternate system build. If you chose to include support for both Windows and Mac build at the time of your installation, you should see both of these options included. Okay, so I'm going to review. So I'm inside my project. I want to make sure that I've saved my scene. So any changes that I've made, I want to make sure that I save. I'm going to choose File, Build Settings. From the build settings, I want to make sure PC and Mac and Linux standalone is selected. I'm going to choose my current platform, whatever I'm authoring on. In my case, it's Mac. And I'm going to choose to build. Now, when I build, it gives me the destination that I want to build to. And for now, I'm going to build just to the desktop, just so I can kind of show you, demonstrate what's happening here. I want to save this build as my first name, my last initial. I'm going to call the underscore Gravity or Gravity Lab. And then I'll include a note as to whether this is a Mac or a PC build. I'll call this Mac. So it's my name, the project, and I could include an underscore here, and then the target platform that I've built for. Okay, now if I wanted to, I could also include a version in here, but this, I'll consider this kind of a final build, and once we get into more complex projects, we'll have different builds going. I'm going to build this to the desktop. I'm going to hit the Save button. That will take a moment to build, and what's happening is all of the assets are being packaged and compiled. So it's taking whatever assets and any kind of solutions that we've developed and anything that we've imported into our project folder, along with a number of other things, and creating that into a standalone executable. Now I'm going to hide Unity. I'll jump out of Unity here for a moment. This is my Mac executable. This is when you build for Mac, you only get one project, one compiled asset. It's a little bit different when we build for Windows, but this is my game. If I double click, the first thing that pops up is my Gravity Lab configuration. I can scroll through here and determine what size I want to launch this window at, okay, or launch the game. And so this would be full screen. I'm going to take it a little bit lower, lower resolution. I can choose the default graphics quality. I'll run mine in good. The lower the graphics setting, the more efficient it runs. I'm going to choose to run mine windowed. If I don't check windowed, it's going to take over the entire screen. I'm going to check windowed, and then I'll hit play. It'll take a moment, load a splash screen, and here's my game. Okay, now this runs on its own. I'll throw in a couple of extra details here in the tips and tricks if you want to experiment with things, but this is my project running. When I'm done with my project, I could go up to the Gravity Lab menu and choose to quit out of my project, or Command Q or Control Q. You'll also notice that when I double click to run this project, now this time I'll run it not in windowed mode. I'll bump it up a little bit higher. You can see that it takes over my entire screen. So if I roll my mouse up to the top left-hand corner, I get this little drop-down menu, and I can do the same thing that I'd done before. Okay, so I'll double click once again. I'll choose to run in windowed, and I'll hit play, and you can see that I have my application running down here in my system dock. I can also right click and choose to quit here as well. Okay, so this is my Mac build. I've just built it to the desktop. We'll stay a little bit more organized next time, but now I'm going to build for PC. So I'm back in my project folder, or my project in Unity. I'm going to choose File, Build Settings. I'm going to go back to the same setup that I was at before, except I'm going to change my target platform to Windows. Now I'm going to build. I don't want to build and run because we want to build, choose our destination. In this case, again, I'm going to build to my desktop to demonstrate this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. This is build W, Gravity or Gravity Lab _ PC, and I'll save. And it'll take a moment to build. While it's building, I'm going to go jump out on the desktop. I'm going to see if I can hide Unity while this is building. You'll notice it generated 2 assets. When you build for PC, you get a data folder that has the same name _ data, and then you have a .exe file. Both of these assets have to go together in order for this project to work. This is the executable. This is all the data that's needed. So this is it's a similar thing for Mac, except for the Mac, it's all combined into one asset. Okay, so these are the 3 things that I need to submit, but I'm going to stay organized here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to call this builds, or more appropriately, since I'm going to submit this online, I'm going to call this build W, Gravity builds. Okay. Now I might make a note that these are works in progress, or we can stay organized in an appropriate way. I'm going to enter my build W Gravity builds, and I'm going to create a PC folder, and I'm going to create a Mac folder. And inside the Mac folder, I'm going to drag and drop my Mac build. And in my PC folder, I'm going to take both of those assets and make sure that they end up in the PC folder. So this is the thing that I want to submit. Okay, and so what I'll do is I want to make this available via Dropbox or Google Drive or some kind of similar cloud sharing service. And I'll demonstrate that through Google Drive really quickly. We can do something very similar in Dropbox. Whatever cloud service file sharing or cloud drive you're using, make sure that you have the capability to do this. Otherwise, I'd recommend just getting a Dropbox account or a Google Drive account. So before I get started, I've organized my builds that I'm going to submit for this project. I'm going to zip these files, mainly because typically if we're trying to send an executable application through a cloud drive or post it to Blackboard or something, it might interpret this as a virus or malicious content. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose to compress this, and that will give me a zip file. And that zip file contains a Mac and PC build folder with all of the appropriate data. So this is the thing that I want to share to the discussion board. Now, this bundle of assets that I've just created is only 28, almost 30 megabytes. Okay, well within the size requirement that I can post to Blackboard. But if this were too much bigger, I wouldn't be able to submit this to the Blackboard discussion board as an attachment. It would exceed the maximum file size, and plus it would just be very time consuming to upload it. So what I'm going to do, and what we should do for every project, is create a share folder that we can submit to the discussion board and to the project submission link. So in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out and I'm going to go to Google Drive. And I'll just type in drive.google. So I'm inside my Google Drive interface. I also have the desktop app where I can open the Google Drive folder. So, whichever is most convenient. I'm going to create a new folder. And this new folder, I'm going to call this Game Design, or Game Design 1, or Summer Game Design. I'm going to create this Game Design folder. And in my Game Design folder, I'm going to create either a new project, or I'm just going to take my Gravity submission and drop it in here. Now, depending on how you want to use this project folder, whether you actually want to work from Google Drive, we'll talk about cloud drives a little bit later and some of the benefits of working with them and how to manage things. But for now, I basically just want this asset, this zipped combination of both Mac and PC builds. I want that inside this folder. So I'll drag this in. Again, however you upload this, there's a couple of different ways to upload it, but I basically want to get this in a dedicated folder. Now, once this asset has been uploaded, I'll be able to share that. And again, the process is depending on the cloud service you're using, you might have to read the documentation. But I'm going to pause this while it uploads, and we'll be back in just a moment. So now that my BuildW Gravity Builds zip file has been uploaded to my cloud drive, in the case of Google Drive and Dropbox, I can select the file through a web browser and right-click on it. And in my case, I can either share or get a shareable link. Share gives us a little bit more options. I'm just going to get a shareable link, and that will flip the sharing of this file on. I could look at the specific share settings to make sure that everything is open to anybody with a link or list it in different ways. I'm going to select the link and copy, Command-C or Control-C. Now I'm going to submit this to the discussion board for everyone to look at. So once I've copied my link to the builds that include both Mac and PC that are zipped, I'm going to jump back over into Blackboard. I'm going to go to the discussion board. All of the projects that we're working on, we're going to share works in progress in different ways. They're not always going to be the builds. Sometimes we'll do some screencasts of the projects that we're working on. Sometimes we'll do screenshots, but we always want to post work in progress builds or final builds. In this case, this is a work in progress build because I intend to work on it a little bit more. But here I'm just going to say this is a demo of posting WIP builds. And then the following link contains both Mac and PC builds. Let me know how they look. I'll paste my shareable link. For courtesy, just pasting the shareable link, it won't auto link, and so what I'll do is I'll just highlight this link. With it highlighted, I'll make sure that I click this link button, I'll paste the same path link, make sure that it's open in new window. Or actually in this case, because it's download, it should be fine in this frame. And I'll insert and we'll say okay. I'll post this. Now, so here's a demo link. If I click on this, it should take me to the file. In the case of Google Drive, I'll need to download this, and this will download to my downloads folder. And at this point, once it's done downloading, I should be able to navigate to the project. Okay, I'll either open it, or in this case, just for the demo, I'll double click directly in the downloads folder. That unzips, and then I'll have access to Mac and PC. Okay, so if I was running a PC, I could double click on the exe file. Because I'm on a Mac, I'll double click on the Mac build. Now, one last note about Mac builds is that if you double click on somebody else's project and you get a security error, it's because it's from an unknown developer. It didn't come from the App Store and it's not certified at this point. But to get around that, all you have to do, you could change some settings in your system preferences, but the easiest thing to do is just to right click and choose to open the project. You'll get this warning that's from an unidentified developer. Just say open and the project should open just as we previously demoed it. So that's a post of a work in progress. Typically what I would do is I would post a little screenshot to go along with this so we can get an expectation of what we should be looking at along with the builds of the project. So I'll go back and modify and continue to work on this and update it along with a thumbnail just to share some best practices. But it's kind of an overview of this entire project. It's really about experimenting, getting familiar with the workflow, the interface of Unity, and some of the different options that we have directly in the Unity game engine. So have fun with this project, experiment, post any questions and works in progress to the discussion board, and I look forward to seeing your work.